thank you all for joining us this evening for the screening of Clarissa's Battle. My name is Alyssa Talkington, and I am the Parent Ambassador Program Manager at the Nebraska Early Childhood Collaborative, which is a mouthful, so I'll say NECC a couple of times. For those of you who are not familiar with us, NECC connects, equips, and empowers providers, parents, and others to strengthen early learning across Nebraska. We want to say a thank you to Film Streams for hosting this community collaboration, and thank you so much to our panelists who are here with us tonight for joining us to talk about Clarissa's Battle and how it relates to us here in Nebraska. I think it was all of your first time watching the film, is that correct? Yeah. So probably some feelings and emotions after watching it. I always tell people this is now my fourth time watching. This is the first time I haven't cried, but it's mostly because I had to come up here and I didn't want to come up with mascara. So we have some questions for the panelists. They all serve in different capacities that impact childcare and families. So I'll allow them to just do a brief introduction of themselves.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Hi, my name is State Senator Wendy DeBoer, and I represent District 10 here in Nebraska, which is northwest Omaha, basically 90th to 156th Street on the north side of Maple. And I work a lot on child care subsidies and other child care issues in our legislature.
Hi. Oh, okay, good. Just want to make sure you can hear me. My name is Michaela Clemens. I'm a parent ambassador with NECC, and I have lived experiences. So most of the things that Clarissa talked about, I actually have lived and experienced.
Hi, this is Anna Yumo, and I have a daycare, and I am located in South Omaha, and my daycare is Bella's Daycare, named after my little one, and I think this movie really touched me.
Well, thank you again for being here and spending the evening with us. We do have World Speaks here joining us for interpretation, so you may hear them interpreting, and if not, that's okay. We are still glad you are here. So this is a question for all of our panelists. I want to just open up the question to each of you. So could you tell us a little bit about how this film connects to what you see happening in our state or in your local community? And what did you connect or identify the most? And Michaela, you kind of opened that up already to say some of these issues were issues that personally impacted you. Could you tell us a little bit more?
I have two children that they go to a special needs child care center, and that waiting list to get in there. We first moved here from Kentucky, and it was really hard for me to get in there. And I don't know if anybody in the audience has a child with special needs, but that care is vital, and it is really hard to try to go to work and care for a child that has special needs. So it touched me because I know exactly what parents are going through and how they feel and trying to choose between feeding your kids and childcare. And special needs childcare is twice as much as regular childcare. So.
Who wants to go next?
Sure. Actually, I suppose all of us got a little bit of a PTSD when they were heading up to 2020 and it's March of 2020 and that feeling. In 2020, in the legislature, I had a bill to expand our child care subsidy. At that time, we were at 135% of federal poverty level, was the highest level that you could get the child care subsidy. We adjourned, a little bit like they did, or recessed in March and came back in July. In July of 2020, we passed that bill, and ever since then, our child care subsidy level is now 185%. That number, however, will sunset and go back to 135% in 2026. So I'm bringing a bill in 24. In order to get it passed in 2020, I had to agree to a sunset. But it sunset in 22. In 22, I brought a bill that put it out to 26. So next year, I'm bringing a bill again to put it out even further or take the sunset off altogether. If we do not do that, we will have the lowest eligibility rate in the entire country.
Wow. Well, being a provider, I see parents struggling every day. They come and they tell me their story. As a provider, I really could only, listen and refer them to the resources. But it's very true that, you're out there and you have to decide whether you put food on the plate or you have childcare. Childcare has become a sense of need now that parents are going back to school. They want to go and better themselves. So now that, you know, they're not, they don't have hope, and they come and they say, well, I can't afford childcare, and there's nothing that, we could do. But I think that slowly but surely we're, raising our voices, and we become stronger with the community out there, just letting ourselves getting that word out there. And I think for me as a provider, it's not much of, it's not the bridge, the financial bridge that I have, the connection with the parents. Is more the, the family connection. I feel that when they come to me, it's like my own family telling me this story.
Thank you for sharing all the work that you are all doing. Michaela, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but what do you hear or see from other parents too? And anything additional you want to share from your own experience as a mother of young children?
So in our community, and I'm also a part of community cafes, so we get together and different individuals throughout the community talk about the different needs that they have, and childcare is always number one. And just being able to be eligible for childcare assistance is one of the huge ones that comes up often. It is almost, it's like you have to struggle to get a good job, but then once you get a good job, then you don't qualify. So then it's like, what do I do? Do I not push myself to get that promotion? Do I not push myself to do better for myself and for my family? Because I need to be able to go to work. I need to be able to take care of my children. So how do I do that? And it's almost like we don't know what to do. And then we're coming together trying to figure things out, but we need the support of individuals who have a say-so in Congress and in legislation, and what can we say? So now we're trying to get our voices together to come up with something to figure out how can we present this in a way that they will hear us and listen to us.
Senator DeBoer, I'm sure you've been hearing a lot about child care concerns statewide. You just kind of talked about some different things that you've experienced over the last few years. Can you share with us what you've been hearing?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. Every year the legislature gets together and we have a retreat. I mean, it's a one-day thing, but no, actually it's 2 days. And we get together, and 2 years ago, I think, the retreat was had a couple of panels on it. And the panels were of rural, like county planners and elected officials and that sort of thing, and one from urban. And they asked each panel, what are the top issues for you in rural Nebraska and in urban Nebraska? And you know what the number one issue in both was? Childcare. So this is not just an Omaha problem. And that's helpful. I mean, it's terrible, but it's also helpful that we're all in this boat together. The very issue which you were talking about, Michaela, about do you take the promotion because then you won't be eligible. That's why we do the child care subsidy eligibility expansion. And in fact, one of the great partners with me on that one was the State Chamber of Commerce, believe it or not. And, we have a lot of folks out there who are interested in working on this issue. Our governor right now is very open to this issue and has been working on some of these things with me. I passed a bill last year to try and help the providers by changing the way that one of the reasons you see these lines for getting into providers is because it is not as economically feasible for everybody to take child care subsidy because it doesn't pay as well. And so one of the things, we passed a bill last year that would allow the Department of Health and Human Services to change the way in which they figure how to pay, or what rate to pay child care providers. It wasn't required that they change it, but allows them. We take baby steps here in Nebraska. And so we're working on that end as well, because we know that if we don't help the providers and we just work on the one side, just with the families, we're not going to get anywhere. We have to work on both sides. Sorry, that was a long-winded answer.
That's great. Thank you. This next question is for Anna. So as a provider, you bring a unique perspective, like you mentioned, to this conversation. How is the current state of childcare affecting those who are caring for children every day?
As a provider, it affects us because we see families struggling, and when families struggles, the kids struggle. We have, done our research. What's the earliest the child, the brain develops is as early as, 0 to 5 years old. And where are those kids? They're in childcare. And that's where we become a very important part of these kids. And if the kids are stressed and they're overwhelmed with the situations at home, as providers have to work extra hard to make sure we provide the essential nurturing environment for these kids when they come in. And these parents also, they don't know what to do with these kids. And us as provider, we need to make sure that we do our work, and we work extra hard. Believe us, we are not in this field to make money. We're in this field because we're passionate about kids. We're passionate about the future of our kids. And this is where we pour our hearts out to these kids, and we say, it doesn't matter what goes outside those doors. In my daycare, this is what's going on. You're in a loving, nurturing environment, and that's all that matters. And you're going to make a difference.
This next question is for you, Senator DeBoer. What do you feel are the next steps in this fight for equitable and affordable childcare? And what role do you see policymakers like yourself playing in this process?
Well, I've already given one of the answers, which is that we have to continue our child care subsidy eligibility expansion. So that bill will be coming up this next year, and we'll need to have help. We'll need to have support with that. So that's one of the next steps. Another thing which we have to do, Senator Day has had a bill to try to make the rate that we give providers for the eligibility a little more like non-subsidy students. So what I'm talking about is, right now we say you only get paid if they're there in the room. And what we would like to do, because if you have a self-pay student, child, you get paid for the month. They pay you for the month, regardless of whether the kid's sick 2 days. But in Nebraska, our child care subsidy will only do it on the days that they're there. Now, during COVID, we got a little leeway, and you could get 5 days. I think it was 5. Somebody probably knows better than me. So you could get, if they were gone 5 days, you still got the month's worth of pay. But that was a program that was put in place, I think by executive order, I can't actually remember, and it's gone away now, it's lapsed. So that is something that really needs to be worked on, is making sure that kids who are getting child care subsidies are, for the provider, pretty much the same as kids who are not. Because from the provider side, if there's a big difference, you're not going to take child care subsidy kids. So we got to make it more financially feasible for the providers to provide care to child care subsidy kids, or it doesn't matter how much eligibility we raise. So we've got to do both. So the big thing we've got to do is we've got to make sure that we're helping those providers to be able to provide to child care subsidy kids. And then we've got to get enough kids eligible. We've got to have people know that they're eligible and help them to get on the child care subsidy. You saw in the film that in, was it 2019 or 2020, I can't remember which, when they expanded the CCDBG, which is the Child Care Development Block Grant that the feds do. And that's what pays for our eligibility expansion in Nebraska. So we got to make sure on a federal level that we keep that CCDBG money, which, you know, is both on our federal delegation and it's also on what we do here in Nebraska and in the department. So there's a number of things to do next. And I want to reiterate that if we do not keep our expansion, we will be literally the worst in the country. So we have some work here to do in Nebraska. When you saw the picture that showed the states and it was like all the victories and then it was a real white stripe right over Nebraska, I was like, yeah, that checks out. So we've got a lot of work to do.
Thank you for that answer. It kind of is a great segue, Anna, for you. How would having more equitable and affordable childcare benefit childcare providers?
It'll benefit us because now we know that if we're at ease, the kids are at ease, the parents are at ease. It'll make a tremendous difference to provide resources for these kids. I would love to take my kids out and into the community. I would love to bring more resources into my program, but because of the economic crisis, my paycheck runs really thin, and I have to cut down on a lot of resources for my child. So I think having more of the financial support from the government, that will help my program as well as the kids. I'll have more staff, more resources to just these kids are a canvas. Their minds are like blank, and you could just pour in anything you come, resources like bring in music, bring in speech pathologies, bring in any kind of resources that they desperately need. After COVID, I saw a lot of kids that needed more and more resources that I cannot provide.
Michaela, what can families do to advocate for this change that we're talking about?
First, you have to be informed. So I always tell people, make sure you know what the rights are for your children. Also know what's going on into your community. Like, ask around, get to know people. Make sure that always tell people that, there's somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody. So just, communicate and get to know others. Also, make sure that you're courageous. I know it's hard, and sometimes we go in with doubts and not feeling like we're going to be heard or we're going to get turned down. But if you really fight in fear and know that you have a voice and that you can be heard, I promise you somebody's going to listen. And even if it's one person, that's all it takes. And then you just keep going. And then every day you just keep going. So whatever you can do, even if it's one person, tell them how you feel. Tell them what you need. Tell them what you want. If you want to write a letter and send it to a senator, you can do that too.
What would winning this battle look like to you? So whoever wants to take that first.
I'll go. I think in the child care world, I think it would be more harmony with the kids. Like they said, the statistic for kids going into juvie or any other crime rate has gone really high. And I think it all starts at child care. That's what you bring in, what you teach the kids there. You start with the solid foundation. You pour in the good and you let it blossom. I feel that that's where it all starts at, child care.
I think winning this battle would look like where people are, first of all, child care providers are fully staffed so that there isn't such a long wait list. And they're educated and trained to support all children that they come in contact with and support. And more mothers and families are not broken because they're struggling, and children are happier when they're playing outside or going to school. I just feel like I know it takes baby steps, but I feel like that battle is where we're all a lot happier and moving forward for greatness, and our pockets are a lot thicker. So, yeah.
I think it looks like it being second nature to say, we know if we give kids a good 1st through 5, 0 to 5, with childcare, with early childhood education, we are saving money, we are saving lives. If that becomes second nature so that everyone knows, obviously, you have to do what should be done to get children into high quality childcare and early childhood education, that's when we win.
So like Michaela mentioned, there's several ways for all of you to get involved. It doesn't have to be super scary. Michaela mentioned a letter or an email, but there's also several organizations you can subscribe to, maybe get their newsletter. Just check out what's going on in your community. So if you noticed at the table out in the lobby, there's a QR code you can scan. That will take you to a link of resources, and I'll just say it, even though you probably won't remember it, but scan the QR code on the way out. www.nebraskaearly.org/Clarissa. That will take you to that same QR code, and it'll list off some resources that you can look into. And just some to name, they're partners that we partner with here locally in the state of Nebraska. So Voices for Children, We Care for Kids, First 5 Nebraska, and Nebraska Appleseed are all great partners, all great organizations to get to know more about. So I think we have some time for questions. If there are any questions from the audience for any of our panelists, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, if you just raise your hand, I'll come to you.
Senator DeBoer, what could we do to be most helpful to you in the upcoming session?
Well, there'll be a public hearing on the bill, so the public is invited to testify. So there will be an opportunity to talk about what that expanded child care subsidy means for our state. So that would be one thing. Talking to your senator, right? It is not that scary. They all look like me, which is I'm sitting here pulling my skirt down because I ate too much the last 6 months of my life and I've gained weight and it doesn't fit. And we're just regular, crazy people who are just like you all, too busy and have the same silly things that we worry about, play phone games when we're bored, And send us an email and send your state senator an email and tell them that this is an issue that really matters to you. As I said, there's a lot of sort of generalized, broad support for childcare, but the devil is in the details. And so send not just that I'm in favor of, good childcare and that sort of thing, but, look at some of the bills that will be dropped. And those organizations that will be listed, I think, with that QR code would be great places to start because they'll watch the bills that are in the legislature and they'll tell you these are the ones that are going to be really helpful to Nebraska. And you can also reach out to me. I'm the only Wendy, like the restaurant in the legislature, so I'm easy to find. There's also nobody named Wendy running, so I will still be the only Wendy in the legislature the next 2 years. So you can look me up on the internet and get to it's just wdebor at leg.ne.gov. But you can get a hold of me pretty easily, and we'll have more information there. But the organizations are a great place to start.
Hi. Ooh, that's loud. I'm sorry. For Senator DeBoer, okay, I don't want to say it wrong. My question to you, first, I want to say I will definitely support the increase to the prolonged increase, I should say. The child in me goes, no, it needs to be higher, it needs to be permanent. But I got you. With the Child Care Development and Preschool Block Grant that comes out every few years, it has said previously that states are to pay the providers in the same manner in which private pay clients pay us. And that means the majority of us. And the majority of us in Nebraska get paid in advance regardless of attendance or closure. We all know that DHHS, however, has requested, which is hilarious, a 2-year waiver, like delay in having to do this. You brought it up as if there was some kind of bill or something that can be done to force their hand, since apparently the federal government can't do it. How can that be done? Because if we get paid in advance, then we can actually pay staff. We'll actually know what staff will be there, because as it stands now, we bill after the fact, and only within the last, what was a year, 18 months, that we finally got away from billing in 15-minute increments. Okay? After the fact. Now it's partial day and whole day, and that's a whole complicated mess, but whatever. Since for example, I'm just an in-home. I'm a home one. Let me rephrase. I'm not just in-home. I'm an in-home one. I have staff because I have medical breast cancer appointments. I have to have staff. I have subsidized families. They don't show up for more than those little 5 days that we've been blessed with. I bill after the fact, and then all of a sudden they show up. I don't have the money to feed them. I don't have the money to do these things with them. But I make it work because, I'm broke broad from Oklahoma dang self. We make it work. But what bill are you talking about? What can we do to support you to force their hand? That'll solve the child care crisis right there in Nebraska, because it feels very self-made.
If I had the silver bullet to what needed to be done to get that bill passed, it had been passed. So we bring it. There's 3 or 4 of us that really bring a lot of these child care bills, and one of us brings it and has brought it for the last couple of years. I think Senator Day has usually been the one that has had that one. She had it last biennium. One of us will bring it again. We'll try again. That's one where I think there could be some education done for folks in the highest level of Nebraska government on, I may or may not have been told at some point that, well, if they're not there, they're not learning. We don't want to pay for things when they're not learning. So there's, I think, an education gap, and it's you saw Clarissa, it took her 10 years. I think somebody will correct me on this that was in the fight before I was, but I think it was like 12 or 14 or 16 years that they fought to get the child care subsidy expansion before 2020. These battles are not short, unfortunately. So I understand that doesn't help you. It doesn't help you today. It doesn't help you, but I wish I knew.
Hey, for Michaela and for Anna, if, like, in the imaginary world of getting what we want, what would the special needs childcare look like? And I'm assuming that in South Omaha, childcare is going to have a little bit different needs than some other areas. I'm wondering what that would look like. And for the senator, like, what is the resistance? I don't get where is the resistance to comprehensive childcare? What is their thinking? What is their ideological thinking?
So, since I do have kids with special needs, I feel like first we need the staff, and we need staff that are trained. There's staff that get hired. I feel like sometimes child care centers get so desperate because they're trying to get kids off the waiting list that they're kind of taking in anybody. And you have to be careful when you're taking anybody, especially with a special needs or respite center. And when they're not educated or don't have the proper training, then accidents happen. And then it's also unfortunate to where we have a lot of families now that have been removed from care because there's no space, there's no staff. So being able to have those staff present first, trained, then that would look so much better for kids that have those special needs, so that us parents are allowed to work and feel comfortable with who we left our children with, so that we're not constantly, like, I used to get calls all the time, my child's in the nurse's office or they're with a security guard, even in the schools too. Like, it goes across the board because it starts in the child care center, then we in preschool, and it goes all the way to our schools. All that needs to happen so that it's full circle, so that we're supporting our kids the way they need to be supported.
I'm going to agree with you because that is absolutely right. You have the right staff, the right training, you'll have a perfect, world. But it's in reality, we lack staff, we lack resources. We're always trying to find, ways that we could expand our daycare. For instance, for myself, I run an in-home. They make it so hard for you to expand to even 2 children. I can't afford that. I can't afford a storm shelter. I'm not, I'm not there yet. But just having the right staff makes a huge difference throughout the day of these kids' life. Having that extra person, not just anybody that has a pulse, no, somebody that's knowledgeable, somebody that knows, childcare. Not just anybody, but the right person, and have those resources available, those trainings available, that it doesn't have to come out of our pockets. You know how many times I say, oh, I would love to go to that training, but it's $45, $50. I add up, and I'm like, okay, well, I took 100 hours of training already. Well, maybe I'll set this aside. Why can't it be free? Why can't they provide those hours for us to get educated? Because in the long run, who are we serving? The children. It's all for the children.
And I think that's kind of the easy answer. The ideological opposition always essentially, in the end, boils down to money. I mean, that's it. That it costs a lot of money.
Well, thank you for your questions. We are at time, so I just want to thank you all for sharing your ideas and your stories. I want to give a big thank you to our panelists, so Anna, Michaela, and Senator DeBoer.